Song in Space Kickstarter is coming up, and we could use your support. I think it's going to be fun.
By engaging with Song in Space, you acknowledge and accept full responsibility for the following effects. Weightlessness. The show may induce feelings of floating, soaring, or untethered gravitational bliss. The creators of Song in Space are not responsible for any sudden urges to drift, glide, or imagine yourself in orbit. Listeners may experience an irresistible need to move rhythmically in the dark, with or without headphones. Participation in zero-gravity dance routines is at your own risk. Backers of this Kickstarter will receive rewards containing information, wisdom, and sonic artifacts from the show's creators. Any inspiration, innovation, or revolutionary ideas sparked by said knowledge shall be considered entirely your responsibility. The show may contain sonic elements that open doors to new dimensions. If you begin hearing celestial harmonies, distant transmissions, or the echoes of lost civilizations, please adjust your reality accordingly. Thank you for choosing to float with us. Proceed at your own risk.
Rise up, O young men of the new age. Set your foreheads against the ignorant hirelings, for we have hirelings in the camp, the court, and the university, who would, if they could, forever depress mental and prolong corporal war. Painters, on you I call. Sculptors, architects, suffer not the fashionable fools to depress your powers by the prices they pretend to give for contemptible works, or the expensive advertising boasts that they make of such works.
Jijiji.
Imagine this. A poet sits at his desk in 18th century London, staring into the void of his candlelit room. He is not alone. Around him, figures shimmer in the dim light, visions of the past, whispers from the future. He does not just write, he transcribes. His words, dismissed in his time, will one day be revered as prophetic. Now, shift to a composer. His ears filled with music no one else can hear. He scribbles furiously, capturing melodies that seem to arrive fully formed, as if dictated from another realm. And today, right now, a scientist deciphers equations that don't yet belong to this era. A novelist dreams of worlds that in time will feel eerily familiar. What if genius is not just intellect or talent, but something stranger? A glimpse in time, a portal, a connection to the future before it arrives. Welcome to this episode of Creativity Jijiji, where we explore genius as a form of time travel. Our guest, Suzanne Clores, has spent her career investigating extraordinary experiences, the flashes of insight, the prophetic dreams, the eerie knowing. Together, we are going to ask this question: does genius allow us to tap into a future that already exists? Buckle up. We're about to step beyond time itself. I wanted just to work through some topics with you because I'm really curious what you've got to say. Because your work explores extraordinary experiences, is the way I see it. So, do you see the possibility that genius could be sort of a temporal anomaly, a mind is able to access the future? Because as we talked about, some artists describe their inspiration as transmission, rather than an act of creation. I certainly understand that. So do you think it's possible that genius might be tapping into a future that already exists?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of conversations about this, as you might imagine, because of the waters I've been swimming in, the different scientists I've been talking to for the last decade. That was part of the Extraordinary Project. I really wanted it to be like an umbrella for all of these phenomena, all of these experiences, whether it's a random person waking up from a dream where they're positive that they had a conversation with their deceased brother, or a person, like you say, a genius, a creative maker who receives a download or a transmission, I think is the word you used. One of the ideas that is being bandied about right now in the world of edge science and futurism. And it's an idea, it's a hypothesis. All of these ideas are hypotheses, but I've been thinking a lot about it because it's so visual, that time is like a landscape. right? It's not linear. We know that it isn't linear already, but like it's a landscape. And so depending on what direction you choose to go, there are experiences, people, information kind of waiting for you on this landscape, right? So I just loved that as a visual. It's almost like, oh, am I going to hike to this mountain today, or am I going to hike to the lake today? Which way am I going to go? And I feel like that connects to your question because, yeah, Mozart, Dylan, these people, and every creative person I know, like we all have connections to multiple selves, and like our past self, our present self, our future self, like we work on that relationship all the time. And so each version, you know, you get a new day, you sit down, you are Chris and you're writing music, right? Like it's almost like you've showed up on the landscape and you're like, what am I going to pull down from it today? What am I feeling? What am I picking up, right? Like, what's the vibe? And then you make something. And I love that idea because I just feel like it takes a lot of pressure off of you as the creator. You know, it's a relationship.
Sometimes when I write or when I compose, the walls of my room soften, turning almost translucent. The edges of reality stretches and wavers like ripples in water. I'm floating, not in a dream, but not in a hallucination, but in a space without edges, without limits, without time. This is my creative space. But what is it? Where am I? Nowhere really. Myself ceases to exist, and that's when I connect. That's when every artist connects. Echoes of every painting yet to be painted, every song yet to be sung, every word yet to be written. They're all hovering there, waiting, pulsing, shimmering with possibility. A melody not created, but remembered. I began to understand that artists were travelers, drifting through a multi-dimensional landscape. And as Suzanne says, catching glimpses of the infinite and pulling pieces of it back with them into the world. Are you familiar with William Blake at
yes. All? Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yes. You're Blakey.
I mean, I actually, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a Blake aficionado at all, but I was very drawn to his work from a young age because I felt like he was trying to capture something important and germane to all of us, how the way we work. And I recently saw an exhibit at the Block Museum up in Northwestern, maybe like 5 years ago, maybe longer ago, of a lot of his drawings. And they're so trippy. they're so trippy. Yeah. The
trippy is the word. Like I was raised in London, and at a time when, you know, it was still safe for kids to wander around. So from a pretty early age, I was free to find my own way around London. And one of my haunts was the Tate Gallery along the Thames, and their collection of Blake was like, I don't know. I would sit for hours. I would try to draw it, you know, and I would try to understand it. And it was just completely mysterious to me. And, you know, he claimed that he could see visions. He could see, you know, the past and the present and the future all existing at once. I mean, that's pretty much a Blake quote, if I remember correctly. So he was right where we were talking about. So in a sense, do you think his poetry was like a form of time travel?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's almost like, and I've worked with mediums and remote viewers who do this type of travel, who actually aren't necessarily as creative as William Blake. So but I feel like the phenomena is the same, where we can get into this later, but when I was doing a missing persons story for the Finding Dawn podcast, I asked the viewer who I was working with, how are you going to do this? And she's someone who has found missing people before, who has, predicted world events, done a number of things. And it's almost like, she has to ask herself the part that William Blake was talking about, like going through all of these phases of time. You have to ask that part of yourself to go to a certain place at a certain time and observe the details, see what you see, write down your impressions and your sensations. And all of that information is valuable information. So I think the thing about Blake that seemed so powerful to me as a young person was like, he sort of knew. I don't think anyone taught him how to do that. You'd probably know before I would. Did he study with anyone who taught him how to do that? Or was he just like an interior explorer?
Step into a world of wonder and imagination. Join us on an enchanting adventure with Wonderlit, the all-new storytelling podcast crafted for curious listeners of all ages. Dive into tales spun by the fabulous Wonderlit machine. Fables and melodies made to intrigue, delight, and ignite imaginations, young and old. Wonderlit. A world of stories awaits you, brought to life by Studio Jijiji. Coming soon to wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Are you ready to wonder?
William Blake was sent to drawing school, but his true education came when he apprenticed with a printer. That was where his hands met the ink, where his sleeves were permanently smudged with black, where he learned to carve letters into metal and press them into paper. The mechanics of printing weren't just tools to him, they were revelations. The scent of printer's ink, the slow, deliberate process of transferring an image, of seeing words emerge from metal, it shaped him. Blake wasn't just an artist, he was a maker. An important difference. He engraved his poetry as he wrote it. Something that never existed appeared before his eyes, like a vision, and those blazing mystical images were never separate from his hands. He didn't just see them. He etched them into reality. Here's the thing about William Blake. He didn't just follow a printer's career. He followed an intention, a pull, a force that wasn't from this world or wasn't from his time. He was spirit-driven, and where others measured their skill by technique, William Blake measured his by revelation. Maybe that's why he was never recognized in his time. His work sat way on the edges of recognition until long after he was gone, because Blake didn't train to fit into this world. He didn't train to fit into his timeline. He trained to transcend it. Suzanne was speaking of remote viewers, and I wondered if, in a sense, if Blake was remote viewing his visionary futures. I mean, is this totally unconscious on the part of the remote viewer? When you said the remote viewer gives themselves almost permission to move forward and backward along a timeline, and then they get information, but they're not really conscious when they're doing that, right? They're just writing the information down that they're getting. Is that the way you understand it?
I mean, they're conscious, but it's like, it's kind of wild. It's like some people do go into a light trance. Other people are just born that way, and I think this remote viewer was just born that way. She just can. And I think probably Blake was born that way too. He was an artist and a poet, and so he made different things. But yeah, so as you know, a remote viewer is someone who can perceive information across space and time. Like that's the simplest definition. Without
Wow, that's simple is an interesting word to put on that.
But I mean, like without the parameter, without like ordinary sensory prompts, or without getting information in typical ways that we all get information.
Do you think that is this a gift, or do you think people can train themselves to do this kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any gift, like musical ability. I think everyone has some. Some people have a lot, and they'll go very far. And other people can basically sing happy birthday, and that's the end of it. I think it's very similar. Some people are, everyone has intuition. If you really want to work on it, if you have dreams of becoming a remote viewer, you can practice and you can improve your sensitivity. It's almost like meditating too. Like are you a meditator? I forget.
Not really. I have a, ambition to be, but I never quite have the discipline to really do it. But
yeah, I mean, it ends up being like, I think that a lot of people feel that way. It's like, you do what you can, you do what works for you. But some people really want to be great meditators. You know what I mean? And so
yeah, some people don't. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So it's this thing of time, which is, it's interesting because, well, first of all, remote viewing, scares the fuck out of me, to be honest with you. I don't know if I could deal with being a remote viewer, because I have a really hard time just dealing with the day as it is, without bringing a million different things into my life.
Yeah. There's a very famous drawing of the 9/11 attack that was done by a remote viewer 3 months before it happened. She didn't know what it was. So you're getting these impressions. It's not like she saw the event, but she was doing a view, and views use transcripts. The traditional viewers write all of their impressions on a transcript. So sometimes that can be a very crude drawing. Sometimes that can be little phrases, echoes of conversation they hear in their ear. It is quite a creative process. But I think the difference is that an artist would then make art out of that, and a viewer kind of brings it into data. And so she drew what basically looked like the Twin Towers, and two long rectangles next to each other, and then something that looked like an electric fan, like a crude electric fan kind of crashing into them. And after the event, I guess who her tasker was went through and found the image. And so there are flaws to that practice and to that method, of course. But I think, to get to your point, I think what you're saying is like, do people see the future on a regular basis? And I think the answer is yes.
I felt like we were close. So close to what I had been thinking. The conversation had been circling the idea of brushing against something just out of reach, and maybe it would always be just out of reach a reach we could understand, but not maybe out of reach of something we could feel. Remote viewers access different parts of a timeline. They don't just imagine, they see, they feel. It's not about creating from nothing, but capturing something that already exists, something from the past or something from the future. And then they bring it back, put it down, sketch it, paint it. That's their art. And we were talking about art, and we were talking about the same thing. Remote viewers seeing something along a timeline, artists seeing something along a timeline. I always believed that artists weren't just inventors, they were receivers. They reached into something vast outside of time, outside of their dimension, outside of their moment, and brought back what they found, and astounded us with what they found. because we had never seen anything like it before. So where did it come from? It had come from the future, is what we were talking about. Suzanne's work led her to an artist named Ingo Swann, who didn't separate the act of seeing from the act of creating. To him, painting wasn't just self-expression, it was transmission, a message from somewhere else, pulled into form. I thought about that. I thought about the sketches and the paintings and the songs and the poems that seemed to arrive fully formed, like they'd been waiting for someone to catch them, pull them out of the air. Maybe that's what art really is, not just creation, but translation. Pulling something from the unseen and giving it shape. And maybe, just maybe, time wasn't a straight line at all. Maybe it was a place where artists could step in and out of, hands reaching forward, reaching backwards, reaching up and down, all directions at once, finding these images, finding these bits of language and words and languages and sounds and songs and poems, finding all that, bringing it back and giving it actual shape in our time.
Pieces of this project are research fellowships, and I recently had the Ingo Swann Research Fellowship down at the University of West Georgia. And most people don't know who Ingo Swann is, but he was a Manhattan-based painter in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, was really his time, I think, as a painter. And he was very into psychic research and very into this idea of multidimensionals or interdimensional information. Not only symphonies available to us or images, but languages, entire lives, other people's lives. I've heard this a lot, not just from the Swann archives, but a lot of parapsychology archives talk about this. During the heyday of parapsychology, that was which is now a shunned science, but that is, there are huge bodies of literature saying just that, that the information is available. It comes up a lot too with children who remember past lives, supposedly, like their own past lives. I know that was something we discussed a little bit, maybe, but I think the idea is the same. Like, the information is kind of in parallel, as you say. I mean,
I believe all time is concurrent, basically. That's what I've always believed. In other words, my grandparents are still alive at the same time I'm alive. And George Washington's wandering around there too somewhere. We're all alive. And I use the word connection. It's like we've used different words, but to me, it's really about connection. So a lot of what you're talking about could raise ethical questions, right? I mean, if you can really master some of this, you could use it for not good. Are there people out there using this stuff for not good?
I mean, probably, but I also think it's part of the conversation. I think that when you do kind of tap in to your altered state or your state of connection, and you do find, and this will happen even if you meditate for years, like, you do have access to other people's information. It just kind of floats in. It's just part of what happens. And I mean, you can look in like Vedic scriptures and you'll see evidence of this. It's part of what happens when you cultivate this part of your mind, and it's supposed to be unifying, right? But I think that there are important ethics to consider. Generally, like, you're right, I agree, like, we are not emotionally responsible. I feel like people are not emotionally responsible in the way that they used to be. I don't even know if it's emotional. It would be ethically responsible too. But generally, you don't really have permission to access other people's space unless they give it to you, right? You have to, unless they give you permission. So like with the remote viewer, she can't view someone ethically unless they give her permission to do so.
Do you think that we're going to ever be able to unlock that kind of ability consciously? Do you think that that's possible? We could get to that place where we can consciously do that?
I think that you'll always have to shift into an altered state, but I think you can get better at that. I think you can shift more easily, and you can consciously make that choice to shift. And it'll be easier to walk back and forth through those doorways. I do think that that's true.
And what would happen? I mean, what would happen if we lived in a world where people could do that? It was just part of our existence.
I mean, I think we'd all have to get better boundaries, but I also think it could be really beautiful. I feel like there could be really interesting new kinds of relationships and connections with people that have the potential to create good. That's what I think.
I've always thought that maybe reincarnation was the answer to the mysteries of exceptional genius. I mean, how do you explain Shakespeare, Mozart, Beethoven, Van Gogh, Bob Dylan? It's as if they had lived multiple lifetimes, is the way I always thought about it, and accumulated their rare skill across centuries, arriving in this world already carrying the weight of mastery. But after talking with Suzanne Clores, I began to see another possibility, one even more intriguing. What if artists slip back and forth a long time? What if their true skills isn't just talent, but an ability to move between moments, pulling from the past, glimpsing the future? And maybe the real magic of heightened creativity lies in doing the creativity with awareness, or at the very least, a heightened sense of what's possible. My guest today on Creativity Jijiji was Suzanne Clores, a fascinating mind exploring these very ideas. Visit The Extraordinary Project at theextraordinaryproject.net to connect with her work. And of course, visit us at studiojijiji.io. And please subscribe to this podcast and stay connected to the conversation. I'm Chris McHale, and thanks for listening.
Jijiji.